May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Jerry Bolick. And back when the Zen Center was located at Sokoji Temple on Bush Street in San Francisco, just around the corner, uphill, on Bush, you make a left, at, I think it's Octavia, and on your right was the Buddhist Churches of America, the BCA temple in San Francisco, and it's a Jodo Shin temple. And it had a bookstore. Might have been called the Buddhist bookstore. And it might have been the only Buddhist bookstore in America. I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't know if I asked Jerry about that. But anyway, that's where I met Jerry. And I spent more time with him when Ananda Claude Dallenberg was in a convalescent hospital and declining and died. And Jerry kept up with Ananda. Ananda was, he actually got to where he identified more with Jodo Shinshu than Zen. He was involved with the Quakers, too. Anyway, so another thing is Jerry's a poet. I receive poetry from him every month, and or something like that. And he'll be reading some poetry, and you'll hear a little bit about Jodo Shinshu. And if you want to know more about Jodo Shinshu, you can just write books on Jodo Shinshu in Google. Or you can write D.T. Suzuki books on Jodo Shinshu, because he translated a lot of Shinran and wrote about Jodo Shinshu, as well as on Zen. Oh, I just did that, and I see the Buddhist bookstore, BCA, Buddhist books or whatever. It'll come up if you write that. It's online now. And there's tons, not just D.T. Suzuki, there's tons of books on Jodo Shinshu. So, let's give Jerry a call right after our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll be there to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and give Jerry Bolick a call.
Hi, David.
Hi, how you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Okay. So, where are you now?
Where am I?
Yeah.
I am in Brisbane.
Oh, is that right? Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. And so, what are you doing these days?
That's a good question. Sometimes.
Aside from writing poetry.
Each day has its own flavor. But I do a little hiking. In Brisbane, there's a state park, San Bruno Mountain, couple of hundred acres of trails, and so I'm out hiking a couple of times during the week. We have a large yard. I do a lot of gardening. We've got fruit trees. And over the last year or so, I started, one of my sons suggested that I do some sketching. And so I've been doing some kind of nature journal kind of sketching, and that's turning into watercolors. But that's, it's kind of a very relaxed schedule. Babysitting, well, I don't know if babysitting is appropriate anymore, but we pick up our grandkids at school across the bay once or twice a week. And a very quiet life. And with very quiet, and I think like many other folks, COVID. Although things were getting kind of quiet before COVID, COVID had its own flavor and impact on on everyone.
Yeah. So, do you and I know each other just through Claude Ananda Dallenberg? Did we meet any other way that you remember?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I can't remember specifically if we met any time before, but we did meet when I retired. I was working at Bank of America for many years, and after that was over, when was it? When the year of 9/11, I left the bank and took early retirement, and after a few months, I started working at the Buddhist bookstore at the Buddhist Church of America, the Buddhist Church of San Francisco.
Yeah, I met you there.
And and so I can't remember if that's where we met and then made the connection, or if we had met, some other time.
So you had a long involvement with Buddhist Churches of America, the Jodo Shin, right?
Oh yes.
Branch of Buddhism around the corner from Bush Street, where Sokoji was.
Yes. Yeah. The only I was thinking of making some notes, but actually I ended up just trying to, get it into perspective from dates. And so I the first time I walked into the Buddhist Church of San Francisco was probably 1978 or 79. something like that. My my son, or one of my nephews, was involved in the Cub Scouts at the church, and he asked my son if my son wanted to go, and so I took my son over there, and it was in very short order. I found myself on the other side of the building, attending services and things like that, and so it goes back to then. My first connection with the temple and BCA and Jodo Shinshu.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And one of the first people I met there was Ananda.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that.
Well, Ananda used to come almost every Sunday.
Yeah.
And he really enjoyed the liturgy, the chanting, and aside from that, he would also come with his wife and two daughters on Father's Day.
Would you repeat that? We had a little glitch, we had a little glitch in the connection there. He'd come with them on what day?
Whatever Sunday was close to Father's Day.
Oh.
Or what is so? And so he would. That's what he asked of his daughters, and his wife would come along and service him. And so we met almost, just very, very early on, and struck up a friendship. That lasted till he passed away.
Yeah. Would you tell me a little about Jodo Shinshu, your understanding of it, and how it might differ from Zen? Or you don't have to do that if you don't want.
Well, yeah. Let me give it a try. And keeping and when as soon as you ask that question, I want to remind you that in the later years, around the time Ananda passed away.
Right. What do you remember what year that was?
No, I don't.
I can tell you. I can tell you in a minute. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I have a file with stuff, about and from us. So I can figure it out. 1978, 79. The date I first went to the temple, I had to go back and figure that out by my son's age. Is that when at the time that Ananda passed away, the bishop at Buddhist Churches of America was Reverend Ogui.
Yes.
And and Ogui, of course, looked to Suzuki Roshi as one of his teachers.
Yeah.
And so the question about what the differences are really, I think depends a lot on who you're speaking with. But for me, I would say, what can I say? As someone who has been involved and has written poetry. I started writing poetry about the same time that I started following up on Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've been writing for a long, long time, and so of course words are important. Words are important for me,
Mm-hmm.
and Shinshu, Jodo Shinshu, is the tradition of language.
Oh.
It's the tradition of Namo Amida Butsu. Shinran said, "Nothing is true and real but the Nembutsu." And when Shinran, the founder of Shinshu, Japanese founder of Shin Buddhism, in the tradition of Pure Land Buddhism, said that, what he meant was the spontaneous verbal response to our encounter with, and again, I'm going to use Shin terminology, with wisdom and compassion in our lives. An aha moment, if you will. Shinjin in Shin terminology, something akin to, I'm not going to say things are exactly alike, something akin to Satori, an awakening moment, where in our tradition, the spontaneous, the Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu, comes out naturally and clean without any effort on the part of the practicer. Meaning as spontaneous, perhaps, more spontaneous than the way we speak to each other in ordinary conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The telephone rings, I pick it up. David, hi, how are you? Oh, Jerry, where are you? Well, I'm in Brisbane. And, and the conversation just goes on. We simply respond. The words come and we hear the words. And as we engage the words and each other, the field of communication, if you will, grows between us in a way that has its own natural rhythms. Things kind of falter when we stumble and begin to think, oh, what year was that? Or for instance, when you first asked the question about Shinshu, I fell back into thinking, or I fell out of, another way to think of it perhaps is, I fell out of a natural communication into one where I started to begin to intellectualize, and had to take steps to try to control what was coming out of my mouth. And after probably less than a minute, the flow starts to come back with itself. And in my ongoing conversation, much like yours or anybody else's, is one where I'm actually listening to what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
The words are coming, and I'm listening to what I'm saying and kind of giving them little nudges here and there when they're not doing things that maybe comport with the direction I think that it's all headed. All of this might be an example of the spontaneous recitation or the spontaneous song that we think of as Nembutsu, Namu Amida Butsu. it also, from my point of view as a poet, is what I look for as a poet. I try to follow where the words are going and see what I discover from that, rather than sit down and try to express something I'm feeling. I try to let the words simply start and begin and follow, and follow where that stream of words is going, so that the ongoing process of writing the poem is a process of discovery for me, and discovery both ways, kind of forwards and backwards, because I've found over the years of writing, just as I've found over the years of reciting Nembutsu, although the energy flow, if you will, is outward, that outward flow somehow or another causes an inward reflection on the entire process. So when I'm writing a poem, very often I'm actually discovering what it is I've been thinking about, what it is that's been troubling me, what it is that I've really been trying to express that has been sitting somewhere in my subconscious, if you will. And the process of Nembutsu, the practice of Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, I think is akin to following the breath, where the breath leads us, and what mysteries following our breath can tell us about our own interior life, just simply because that's what happens. And where some understandings, and I'm just going to keep going here, where some understandings of Zen suggest effort and control, I would say that others that I've heard or come in contact with suggest that Zazen, or deeper levels of appreciation, actually bring the meditator into a place where the self drops away. It's not a matter of self-control.
Yeah.
The self drops away. And this is very similar, and this is the heart of Shinshu. The heart of Shinshu, one of Shinran's statements in an essay that he wrote much later in life, he talked about no self-working. And he said, true Nembutsu, or Shinjin, coming in touch with the wisdom and compassion of Amida, with the energy flow of life itself, the endless change and flow of life itself, has nothing to do with our efforts. We come in touch with that when our efforts fall away. And so spontaneity and no self-working or naturalness, a life of naturalness, just simply going with the flow, and discovering what's here in this moment for us that arises and becomes us in the context of our contact with the world. This is a life of Nembutsu. And in my mind, this is the way I would understand a life in Zen. But that's, or for that matter, a life as a poet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, Namu Amidaba Butsu, that means homage. Would you translate Namu as homage?
It can be translated as homage, or I take very often you hear teachers say, I take refuge in the name of Buddha. Okay. Yeah. But what our teachers, what some teachers tell us is that Namu Amida Butsu, those sounds, those words, were put together initially so that in the Japanese, to the Japanese ear, and to the Japanese way of speaking, it would come close to the original Sanskrit. So it was a matter of literally saying, and we call Namu Amida Butsu, I take refuge in Buddha, or in Amida Buddha. Amida meaning infinite light and infinite life. So life in capital letters, wisdom, compassion. I take refuge in the wisdom and compassion that is the universe. I take refuge in the formless Buddha. Is what that means. But it's for the original Japanese thinkers, it was a matter of simply, and we call that the name. In Pure Land Buddhism, that whole phrase is referred to as the name.
The name, N-A-M-E?
N-A-M-E, yes.
Yeah.
The name. And the whole point of the name is to simply say the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not get wrapped up in what it means.
Yeah.
But to say the name. Let the self go and give yourself to the name.
Yeah.
Very similar attitudes that we find, I think, in our Zen communities.
Yeah, sure.
Let go and give yourself over to this.
Yeah. I wonder what that Nichiren people say about homage to the Lotus Sutra, Namu Myoho Renge-kyo. I wonder if they say something similar there, or some of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a lot of. I haven't had a lot of connection with Nichiren over the years, and the only connection I might have had was through Japanese Shin teachers and the strong sectarian kind of dynamic that we find in Japanese Buddhism. I think maybe prevents us in a lot of instances from what might be well shared in the different traditions. So I don't know. I can't really speak to it. Yeah.
That's very true. The sectarian tradition of Japanese Buddhism, I really ran into that a lot. Many Americans tend to be sort of ecumenical and wanting to, get together and stuff. And
yeah. But I would personally, I would say that the real test, if you will, I mean, if you need to answer the question, to really answer that kind of question, if it's a serious question for ourselves, we simply need to engage in the practice and find out for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
That's right. That's right. Now, Ogui, at least for, some period of his life, practiced Zazen. Do you know if he continued that? I mean, he did with Suzuki.
My understanding is that he did. When he was bishop, I only knew of him not really well. I had heard his name, and of course he had published a book many years ago, and I was kind of Zen Shin. Bear with me. I'm seeing if I can see it on my shelf here. But he, the title of the book has both the word Shin and Zen in the title of the book, because as a teacher, he presented what was of value, what he knew was of value to him. And so I attended a couple of weekend retreats with him. One of them was actually over in Marin at Green Gulch.
Oh, is that right? Huh.
Yeah. It was a Buddhist church of San Francisco, and we did a weekend retreat.
Oh.
And invited Ogui, who was the bishop at that time, and he taught us and led us in Zazen.
Uh-huh.
And we also recited Nembutsu.
Uh-huh.
And so I was of the impression that he still had a Zazen practice.
Yeah.
But as bishop, I know that he had many deep discussions with the various ministerial committees in BCA to assure them that as bishop, his focus was going to be propagating Jodo Shinshu. That was a big question that came up. But at the time, BCA was, as I recall, was really struggling, and they needed somebody with the kind of vision that he had.
Yeah.
And so he got the support, and he made a lot of very significant changes, not in the teaching, but in creating programs that brought more lay leaders into teaching and semi-teaching roles. So he left behind a very rich legacy.
He's Koshin, right? Koshin Ogui.
Yes.
Yeah. He came, I did a book signing in Chicago. Oh, God, I don't know, turn of the century. And he came to it with a bunch of students. That's before he was bishop. And I had interviewed him for Crooked Cucumber, and he wrote a 9-part, I think, series on Shunryu Suzuki for the Michibei, or, well, Nichibei, Mainichi, or, well, one of the Japanese newspapers in San Francisco.
Right.
And I've got all that on Cuke.com. Do you know where he is now, how he is now?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I can only tell you, and and I think you asked me this once before, years ago.
Yeah.
If I knew, and I can only tell you that after he left his responsibilities as bishop, he did go to a temple, and I think it was somewhere here in California. He returned to temple ministry.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. Yes, he did.
Well, I'd love to get hold of him. You're right. I have tried, but maybe I didn't try very hard. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. Well, now Shinran, who founded Jodo Shinshu, or we think of as the founder, he was initially a student of what's the name of the founder of Jodo Shu?
Yeah, Jodo Shu, Honen.
Honen, right? I almost said it.
Yes, Honen.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I thought it was going to come out. I could feel it coming out.
Yeah. I do that with names. Like, I'll really know the person's name, but I'll be unsure, and I don't want to say the wrong name. That's worse than saying, "Can you remind me of your name?" So Jodo Shu and Jodo Shinshu arose almost at the same time, right? Or was Hoen not the founder of Jodo Shu? It was probably a continuation of something, huh?
No, Honen is considered the founder of Jodo Shu.
Yeah.
Although, and I'm not really a student of history, so the details of these kinds of things, I can't testify to that. But there were as with Zen, there were various schools of Jodo Shu, but Honen is widely considered the founder in Japan.
Yeah.
And then various schools split off from Honen.
Yeah.
And Shinran was one of the students who, and one of the schools that split off, if you will, from Honen. But Shinran always didn't think he was doing anything different from Honen.
Yeah.
From Shinran's perspective, he was transmitting what he felt was the heart and soul, if you will, of Honen's teaching.
Yeah.
So in Shinran's mind, it was always one stream.
Now, my understanding, I think from before I knew Ogui, was that Jodo Shu and Honen emphasized Onigai Kokoro, which is like, Onigai is like please, or I beg you, or supplicating, and Kokoro mind, right? That it was please save me, right? and that Shinran's take on it was arigatai kokoro, grateful mind. Thank you that I'm already saved. Does that ring true to you?
Yeah, yes, and let me say yes, but here's the way that I would say it or express it.
Yeah.
And you may very well be 100% accurate there, but in Jodoshu, emphasis is placed on the recitation of the name. The practice is recitation of the name, and it is the practice is the vehicle for awakening.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
In Shinshu, although we speak of the practice, as I mentioned earlier, when Shinran talks of reciting the name or the true and real Nembutsu, it's the true and real Nembutsu that spontaneously arises from the awakening experience. So in Shinshu, the awakening experience comes first. True Nembutsu comes out of that.
Yeah.
All the Nembutsu and practice and chanting that we do prior to that, or aside from that, let me put it this way: aside from those awakening moments, perhaps multiple moments over a lifetime, are usually thought of as self-effort chanting or self-effort practices.
Oh, so you're saying that Jodoshu is Jiriki, right?
Jiriki, yes.
Yeah, self-power. Huh.
Yes.
I never thought of that. Wow.
Well, it's the emphasis now, and again, in the ordinary course of discussing these kinds of issues, the emphasis in Jodoshu is on the recitation as the pathway to awakening. And Shinran made a very clear departure from that by saying Tariki, no self-working.
Right.
Amida's working, right? Or the working of the universe at large.
Right.
The things that happen naturally in our lives because of the multitudes of causes and conditions at work that are well beyond any of our individual efforts.
Right.
Now, that being said, Shinran still said we should still recite Nembutsu as best as we can.
Yeah.
But there's no number, there's no fixed way to say it. There's no, and some of the works that he points to that speak of these issues make it very, very clear that we're all different. Jerry Bolick's Nembutsu experience and when he says it and how he says it and how many times that arises is completely different or can be completely different from Ogui Sensei, or anyone else. And this is because that's the way it is. This is who we are as human beings. And so, we simply give ourselves over as best we can in the context of who we are in the greater field of our living experience. And so to say that there is no one way is a dramatic and very radical understatement.
Yes. My interpretation of one way is I always try to look for what's the truth in something, because clearly people's understanding, one way, there's bumper stickers and say one way. It means accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior is the only way to heaven. But I see one way as meaning, you get to a certain point where I was just reading some Meister Eckhart, where he says theologians argue, but mystics speak the same language. So you get to that level, that the different ways take you to, then the only way is through big mind, through a meta mind, through, it's just got different names. So usually the understanding of one way is that my name, my words are the only way, my particular belief. But I think it's what you get to through that is the one way. Suzuki said it. This is the only way, and, my tendency is to reject that, but I just understand it in an absolute sense. It's not a relative statement. It's more like an absolute statement. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. And my understanding of, yes, absolutely. But my understanding of Shin and Shinran is that the real point for Shin Buddhists, that the real point that we as Shin Buddhists need to understand with our whole being, if you will, is that the real work is being done. So, anytime I consciously recite Nembutsu is Jiriki. When it comes out spontaneously, that's Tariki. Right. That's not my work. That's not my working there.
That's very interesting to me that you called Tariki no self power. Usually I hear it translated as other power, and ta means other. But I like no self power. That's really good.
Yes, and throughout some of his writings, Shinran, equates the two. When we say no self-working, we mean other power. Other power means no self-working.
Yeah, that's good. That places both powers dead center in our own mind. The small mind is Jiriki, the big mind is Tariki. That's never thought of that. I like that.
Yeah, and all the essential work is done by the big mind, not the small mind.
Right.
The small
right.
mind is just all the chatter around it.
Right. This is true. I've realized more and more, not only in spiritual practice, but in sports and art and in people getting things done, even in people getting evil things done. They get to a certain level where it's like their muscle memory takes over, and it gets to a deeper level, and they're acting more fully out of their deeper mind.
Yes.
But yeah. So what occurs to you now?
Actually, I didn't realize how much I miss this. In my early days at the Buddhist Church of San Francisco were about these kinds of. We spent, there were ordinary services and celebrations and things like that, and temple life is all about family life as well and community. But all little workshops and gatherings, and this is where Ananda and I got to know each other, was in those times after the services, over coffee or meeting for lunch or meeting in each other's homes with, maybe just a couple of other people, and talking like this.
Yeah.
We're asking each other questions and working on things that feel so not just relevant, just feel so important. And over the years, well, many years, I hadn't really realized how many years, some of that intensity started to drop away in temple life. And so that maybe a couple of years prior to COVID, so 4 or 5 years ago or so, I needed space. Temple life and whatever was happening in various study groups just wasn't reaching me. And part of it, I think, is that beloved teachers begin to die.
Yeah.
And the flavor of the world changes somehow.
Yeah.
They're still with you, but you can't go have coffee with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so over the past 4 or 5 years, part of my question, and I guess this is in answer to your question, part of my question has been, okay, so I'm healthy and vital and all of that. How am I going to spend the rest of this?
Mm-hmm.
What does all this mean? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's really good to have a practice, that a deep practice. It sort of makes questions like, what's the meaning of life and everything irrelevant? All the questions Buddha wouldn't answer. You just keep the noble silence. I was thinking about this one way. I think now there's various branches of Nichiren. There's Nichiren Shu and Nichiren Shoshu, and they're very different. Nichiren Shu is more part of the mainstream Buddhism in Japan anyway. And Nichiren Shoshu tended to be more radical. Well, and then, of course, they got into being political, and that split off. The Soka Gakkai split off from the Nichiren Shoshu, and became very involved in wanting one world government and peace on earth, and a lot of good things. But they tended to think, and Nichiren said it, they tended to think very literally that that was the one way, the only way. And I think Nichiren's the only founder of a Buddhist sect that, would say things like everybody else is going to hell and stuff. But I don't have a deep understanding of Nichiren. In Japan, I'd go to this Nichiren temple, Nichiren Shu, not the Shoshu, because the chanting was so great, and I'd just go there and listen to the chanting.
And, and there's something similar too in Jodo Shin Buddhism. And I was trying to remember there's multiple branches of Shin Buddhism in Japan, but the two main ones are Higashi.
Yeah, east and west.
Yes, east and west, and I couldn't. And the Buddhist Churches of America is not Higashi. It's Hongonji. No, Higashi.
There's Higashi. There would be Nishi. Higashi. What is it? Higashi what?
Higashi Hongonji.
All right, that means Higashi Hongonji. There's these two really big temples in Kyoto, the headquarters.
Yes.
For Higashi. Well, yeah. The west is Nishi. Nishi Hongonji, I would assume. And they're very large temples. And they're not far from each other. They're both sort of near the train station in Kyoto.
Yeah. I've had the good fortune to have been in Kyoto a couple of times, but the Higashi and Nishi is the Buddhist Churches of America.
Oh, I wondered about that. Oh, and do you know what the difference is between the two?
Yes. The major difference, as I understand it, is that Nishi has tended historically to be focused on doctrine, and Higashi has made an effort to continuously reinterpret the teaching, the Shin teaching, into reinterpret the message in a way that ordinary people can understand. So Nishi teachers again tend to be more conservative when it comes, if you ask them a question about what is Shinshu about, and the Higashi and so here I am all these years, 50 years or something, as a member of a Nishi temple. Most of the teachers that I find most exciting are Higashi teachers.
I knew those two, there were those two temples, but I never heard people saying, the Nishi or the Higashi. They just say, Jodo Shinshu or Shinshu. You know what I hear from, Zen, priests is that, this was funny, that they I heard this several times. Maybe it was a thing they said, Japanese can't get into like sort of set phrases. They'd say, "Oh, yeah, I like Jodo Shinshu. I just don't like the priests." Really, I heard that several times. And it always seemed that, like, you know what, D.T. Suzuki was, he loved Jodo Shinshu. I don't remember any, but I didn't read his stuff about it. But just a cursory look at it, I don't remember any discussion of Nishi or Higashi. But D.T. Suzuki, I think, wrote as much and was just as devoted to Jodo Shinshu as he was to Zen. He's only thought of as Zen, but he liked both of them. Are you aware of that?
Oh, yes. No, I have a couple of I have a whole set of publications that he did over the years. Most of them I got were publications, books that one of the first temple ministers at BCA, when he passed away in San Francisco, his wife wanted me to take from his library books to remember him by. And so among some other books, I took the D.T. Suzuki writings on Shinshu. And so, no, I was very aware that Hongguan-ji reached out to D.T. Suzuki and asked him to do a translation of Shinran's major works.
And did he do it?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes. He did. Now, some Shin teachers are going to say, "Oh, yeah, well, Suzuki did a great job, but it's all from a Zen perspective."
Yeah.
So,
well, that could be.
And it probably is. And then my comment to that is, and so what?
Right.
But it was actually the Hongguan-ji who asked him to do it. Because they needed a translation in English that they could count on.
Yeah.
And he was the guy. So no, that's always fascinated me, and just that alone would be reason enough, in the broader community to have continuing connections and dialogue, between, Shin temples and Zen temples. We share a lot here. We share, a revered teacher. But, those kinds of things are just too little known and too little talked about in my mind.
Yeah, well, it does seem to me, just thinking of, various things I've heard and read and seen and experienced, that that they both consider each other the closest thing to them, are the friendliest. I mean, Shunryu Suzuki never mentioned anything well, no, that's not true. But he spoke affectionately about Jodo Shinshu, and but every once in a while he'd say something about Tendai or Shingon, especially Shingon, that was positive or whatever. But mainly he wasn't real ecumenical. But the students they tried to get him to be go to these group meetings and this and that, and he'd do it. But it really wasn't a big deal to him. His art was in being at his temple in case somebody came by and wanted to know about Zen or something. The Japanese are real good at that. Their sense of responsibility toward their duty is very hard for an American to match in what I've seen. But Suzuki was friends with not only Ogui, but I think before that and later on he was friends with the bishop, or at least the chief priest of BCA in San Francisco, who maybe was the bishop in his time, and they'd have he and his wife and the bishop and his wife would have dinner together, and he did very little socially, but I remember that he did that. Maybe not a lot, because basically he never wanted to go out.
Right.
Except walking Japantown, maybe.
Right.
Well, Jerry, could I get your poetry? What's it? Once a month?
Yeah. Well, yeah, more or less.
More or less. It seems like about once a month.
Yeah.
And I save it all. I might have thousands of your poems. They're very short. Are they haiku? I can't.
Yes.
They're short, right? They're haiku.
Yeah. Sometimes. Sometimes I would say they're haiku.
Right.
They're
sometimes.
definitely short. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So, would you read us some?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I can send it to you if you don't know where it is.
No, here. Let me be real adventurous and read you some that I haven't typed out yet. So
good.
Just read
good.
from.
I understand that. Yeah.
So my usual practice, I write most every day in the morning,
mm-hmm.
And then periodically we'll sit down and type them out and figure out which ones I want to send out. And so what I'll do is thumb through. Bear with me. So you'll these are okay. I'll do what I never do, and that is or maybe what I should do more often is just this is what I wrote, and before typing it out, I'll read it as best I can and hope it seems like a poem.
All right, cool.
And let me just kind of add this.
Whatever you want.
I tried when I first started writing poems. I came across Japanese haiku, of course, and so I was trying to imitate haiku poets. Don't ask me who at the time. But I really began to write on my own when I came across the works of the American poet William Stafford. And he's World War II conscientious objector camp experience. So, quite a number of our literary figures come out of the objectors camps of folks who were put into camps, objected to the war, refused to go, and they were put in conservation camps and had to work their way through the war. And William Stafford was one of those, and he wrote every morning. But his definition of a poem was what opened up poetry for me, allowed me to write. And he was a much loved poet and teacher of poetry. And his definition is as follows. A poem is a group of words that catches your attention just so.
Mm.
A poem is a group of words that catches your attention just so. Now so the poet, as the poet is writing, feels that the poem is complete when that kind of experience is reached, sends the poem out, and then has no more control over it. The words go out, and it's the listener or the reader who determines how much of what is sent out is a poem, depending on which groups of words catch their attention just so. So William Stafford, his entire life, refused to define for anyone what a poem was.
I like that. I always feel that the person who appreciates art is really the interpreter, and always trying to rely on the person who created it, a painting, a writer. What they have to say is okay too. I liked Virginia. What's her name? The woman who designed the San Francisco Center City Center. Did the Hearst Mansion. Anyway, I'll fill it in later. She said, when asked about her work, she said, "My work speaks, I do not."
Yes. And, and to some extent, our life as Zen Buddhists or Shin Buddhists might also, if we can find a way to communicate it that way, without putting limitations or even suggesting limitations on what other people's experience may be.
Yeah.
So a very important. That's been important for me for years. And when I've taught, I've had the opportunity to teach poetry and haiku mostly to a variety of different groups, and I always start the groups with that definition so that people realize what they are writing and what pleases them is what the process is about.
Right. That's Julia Morgan. Julia Morgan is the woman I was quoting. We go
on. So with all of that and my hemming and hawing, we went down to San Clemente for a week. Our older son and his family moved from the Bay Area a couple of years ago and is now in Laguna Beach. So we were down there, and this short poem comes from sitting outside on the terrace. The short haiku, if you will, comes from sitting on the terrace in the hotel where we stayed. Outside terrace, warm sun bakes my face, fingers and feet cold. Or in December 20th, San Clemente morning number 2 rises pink glow. Streak spoken warmth not yet heard across the chilled and shadowed earth. The Pacific gently pummels. California winters so soft. Christmas seems but a dream. Outside the resort, Coyote waits. As usual, won't say why. And that was true here and there. I walked out my door one morning for a walk, and a coyote was standing there, just waiting. She reads aloud the story unfolding. Walking below the cliffs, the surf following behind. Now, here's one I was reading while I was down there that week. I was reading a lot of the poetry of Santoka, contemporary Japanese haiku poet. He's passed away now, but modern free-form haiku. And this poem goes, Santoka wrote of sitting amidst his home dialect. I'm captured by Southern California's slow-rolling Spanish music, slow-rolling Spanish music laid on nearly every sign. You know, it's. I found myself just delighted all the time reading the street signs. All these beautiful Spanish names and different towns and cities we went to.
Yeah.
And let me see. Okay, I don't know. This may come out kind of clunky because it's hard for me to read my own writing sometimes.
I hear you. I hear you there.
I read an interesting. There was I got a book recently, and right inside the cover was a quote from Saint Augustine, who said, "Only the lover sings." So they say, Augustine says, only the lover sings. When, yes, and maybe, he's only singing her song and his only of itself and for itself, a singing given of the world from the world back into it. Talk of lovers and all tagged along behind the all that ought not and yes will not be burdened by reason or by name. And just one more, the last in my journal as of today. Returning LA to the SF Bay Area, we chose the slower 101 unfolding. Mountains, coast, open prairie, watershed, sky, and too long lain dormant love returned in surges of blossoming song. State of endless sustenance. Home.
Yeah. Well,
we drove. Yeah,
I can
we
appreciate the
drove back.
details there because 101 is, the slower route rather than 5 going north.
Yes.
And I used to take 1. It doesn't go through now, though, does it?
Why would you say it doesn't go through?
Well, it was broken in Big Sur anyway. Has that been fixed?
Yes. I think everything's been fixed.
Oh, no kidding.
I think.
No kidding.
But I may be wrong.
It was really serious damage. Esalen was, you had to helicopter into Esalen. It was only for the rich, and then it became only for the richer. But maybe there were other ways to get there.
Yeah, and don't quote me on that. I had forgotten about that completely, about that. But yeah, we decided to go 101, and I fell in love all over again with California. It was just such a delight after going back and forth on 5 so many times.
Yeah. 5 takes you through. You know that place where you stop where there's all the cattle yards, that if you go at the wrong time, you can just smell just for miles the stockyards. Factory farming.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, those poems are great. And let me ask you one other thing. Where were you born?
New Jersey.
Oh yeah, far out. And what was your family like? What was your upbringing like in terms of religion or anything?
Well, we went. We were brought up. My sister and I. My dad. Working class suburbs of New Jersey. Probably took us maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours by bus to get to Manhattan, New York. So suburbs of New Jersey, but working class. I think only one of my friends' fathers wasn't didn't work in the trades of some kind.
Yeah.
And wore a jacket and a tie to work. Only one when I grew up. So it was working class. Moms, all the moms worked part time, and and the dads worked full time. But my dad would drive us. My dad would drive us to church, to an Episcopal church on Sundays, and my mother and father would go to church on Christmas and Easter. But my sister and I went to Episcopal church regularly, and at some point I became an altar boy. But,
well, good for you.
So,
altar boy.
But beyond that, no, there was really no focus on religious life. We didn't say a prayer before meals or anything of that sort.
Yeah. What year were you born?
1943.
43. Oh my gosh. Incidentally, Ananda died February 18th, 2008.
Okay.
So that's anniversary. That's coming up, and your 80th birthday is coming up this coming year.
Yeah, this coming September. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm close behind. trying to catch up to you.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah. I'm surrounded by young people all the time.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I don't want to go to a home or a community that's for retirees, but we'll see what happens. Um, so you well, what was it like growing up for you? Just roughly, what you went to school. What did you want to be? What did you do? Did you go into the army? That sort of thing.
It was, I don't know, I was happy. I had a happy childhood.
That's good.
My dad, it was good. My dad was a welder and a pipe fitter. So he, he worked really hard.
What is a pipe fitter? Is I always get an image of like a plumber.
Yes. The same kind of skills and the same kind of skills.
But why is what is a pipe fitter doing that they're not called a plumber?
Oh, well, think of think of a shipyard, think of a ship, think of any kind of plant that is producing things using heat, using gas, using water. All of these things require piping.
A lot of piping, a lot of big piping. Yeah, I see. I never thought about it before. What is a pipe fitter? I see. That's neat. And sometimes welding, like if you got copper pipe and
yes,
so they go together.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah.
All right.
It all overlaps. For a while, when I think when I was maybe in high school, he was working for a company that produced chemicals. So all of that kind of stuff, welding the tanks, fixing, repairing the tanks, all of the lines and all of that stuff. So you're right. I had never thought of it in terms of plumbing. But my dad was one of those guys who could do literally anything. With his hands.
Yeah.
Anything.
I think I was wrong when I said welding for copper. You don't weld copper.
No. Yeah. What is it? There's a different
smelting
process. But,
no, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know either.
I'd always get when I had to do it. I'd get somebody else to come in. When I was doing in America, I had to do so much myself. Here, I don't have to do anything like that. But working with copper pipe was one of those things really best to have somebody that knew what they were doing.
Right.
Yeah.
So working class Jersey, we'd go to the shore in the summer, and it's the shore, not the beach.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, on the East Coast, people go to the shore.
Oh, I see. It's just that. Oh, yeah. I see. Oh, that's interesting.
I grew up going to the shore, and it wasn't until I ended up in California that I started to go to the beach.
Oh, all right. That's cool. Well, I keep learning things here. What about school? Did you do well in school?
No, in all through grade school and high school, I struggled. School was hard, but I was lucky enough when it came time for college. My father was born in North Carolina, and so we would take family vacations to North Carolina. And I applied to a small college in North Carolina. I would have never gotten into Rutgers, which was the state school in New Jersey. And so I was fortunate enough to get in to Elon College in North Carolina, and had a year there. And after after that year, I went back to Jersey for the summer, and my oldest friend, over the course of that year, he had stayed home. Actually, he was finishing up high school, but he had stayed in Jersey, and he discovered Jack Kerouac.
Oh.
And so when I got back for that summer vacation, he turned me on to Jack Kerouac, and we started taking the bus across and going to Greenwich Village, and all of these, from a perspective of how we grew up, these were very wild things. It just seems like we were never the same. The world wasn't the same after the exposure to On the Road and Donna Bums and that kind of literature and that kind of living experience. And so when I went back to college for my second year, it just didn't, it just wasn't working for me.
I understand.
So I dropped out. Yeah, I dropped out and did what any red-blooded American boy would do at the time, since I knew I would be drafted. Remember the draft?
Yeah.
I joined the Marines.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
And that was also another mistake, but one I couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
No. And so 4 years in the Marines.
4 years. My gosh.
Took a couple of cruises on the Atlantic, since Marines are part of the Navy. I spent almost a year aboard ship, cruising the Mediterranean, the Caribbean.
What years were these 4 years?
I joined 1962.
62 to 66. And you didn't
62.
get over to Vietnam?
No.
Yeah, you just you missed. You were just a little early. 66. There were soldiers over there in 62, and not many.
And it started to increase. The numbers started to increase in 66.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
The unit that I was in only sent small contingents over there. Groups of like a dozen or so. It wasn't the entire outfit that would go over. And so, I was very, very, very fortunate not to have to go before I got out. And in the last 2 years, I was actually stationed in Hawaii. And I wasn't good at being a Marine. So I had a hard time. It just not. I didn't know then that my real spirit was that of a poet. But so it was difficult. But as I've told my children 100 times, kind of stumbling my way through those years. A couple of months before I was to get my release, my wife went to Hawaii. My wife to be went to Hawaii, on vacation, and I happened, and she was visiting with her best friend from high school, and I knew her best friend, and so I met my wife, and we fell in love. And when I took my discharge, I took it in, and she lived in San Francisco. I took my discharge in San Francisco, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Oh, that's how you got there. Now, so you started living in San Francisco in 64.
No, in late 66.
Pardon me.
Yeah.
I meant 66.
Yeah.
But what did you do?
Well, various jobs here and there, and then at some point, I on the GI Bill, I went to City College. And then I went from city to San Francisco State.
Oh.
Got my degree in philosophy and religion.
Oh, goodness.
And that was so useful that for a couple of years I worked as a manager of a pizza place. Yeah. And then in the late 60s, early 70s, our first son was born in 71. Before he was 2 years old, I finished school, was working, in a pizza place, and we went by car across the states and spent 4 years in New Hampshire. We just kind of wandered about and bumped about, and I got work in New Hampshire. We
were doing what? Doing what?
Well, I started there doing pizza stuff. That's the only, no one was interested in a philosopher. So I did what I did. I used the skills I had and, did pizza work. Then I did a variety of things, most of which I can't even remember, until, and then we had two more children while we were there. So our second two kids were, although they claimed to be San Francisco, natives, it's a very thinly veiled lie. My older son was born in San Francisco. The younger two were born in New Hampshire. But I just kind of trying to figure out what I was going to do. I stumbled on paralegal work, which was very, very new at the time.
Oh.
and got an AmeriCorps position at a nonprofit law firm in New Hampshire as a paralegal, helping people with employment claims and things of that nature, just nonprofit legal aid work. And then we moved back, and I started taking paralegal classes at night, and then we finally moved back to San Francisco, and after a while I was able to get paralegal work, and I did that for probably 13, 14 years before going to work for Bank of America.
Oh, right. Did you work in the big black building?
I did.
Yeah.
Ananda would come by maybe a couple of times a month and wait for me at the Banker's Heart, that big black rock.
Right.
And then we'd walk up. We'd get sandwiches and walk up to the park just below Grant Street in Chinatown, and we'd have lunch there a couple of times a month while I was working there downtown.
Below Grant Street in China. Is this a small park? Are you?
Yeah, it's a small park. It's right on. It's California. So California, Kearney, and is it Grand? Is it Grant Street? Is it Grant or Grand that runs in Chinatown? So it's the main drag in Chinatown.
Okay.
So
yeah.
Grand.
Yeah.
So it was bordered by California on one side, Kearney on the bottom, and on the top part. Actually, there was a small street before Kearney, or not before Kearney, before Grand, but it was just nestled right up above the Banker's Heart.
Yeah.
Or there was some sort of a parking lot, I think. That's what it was. It was a parking lot there, and this little park sat on top of the parking lot, and then you could just walk a half a block up to Grant.
I think there was Tai Chi in that park in the mornings.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was, they had Tai Chi in the mornings, and there was a guy named Ed who would do Tai Chi in the afternoons around lunchtime.
Yeah.
But no, Ananda and I spent many lunchtime afternoon gatherings talking about Shin and Zen.
What did you do for Bank of America?
I went there as a paralegal and worked in their legal department for a few years, and then just because I was getting bored, I found a position. They were looking for a legal documentation person on the trading floor to support the traders. And so I applied for that and got that. And it was, do you know anything about the markets?
No.
Okay. And so I got this work, negotiate the traders do all of their trading, but there are certain areas of trading that require an actual underlying legal agreement in addition to just the trades that they do. So they, I'll buy this at this price and you'll sell it at that price, and okay, we agree to that. But certain areas of the trading floor, since there's so many of those smaller little transactions between these financial institutions, they enter into, what they called master agreements that would kind of set all the broader rules about that ongoing relationship. What happens if? What happens if we don't pay? What happens there? And so I went up. I went up and started working and learning how to do these kinds of agreements for this very small part of the trading floor. And it happened to be, unbeknownst to me, a part of the bank's trading business that was in a period of expansion. And the same thing was true all over the world. They called these interest rate swaps or derivatives, which means, nothing, except if you're a trader or a bank or a financial institution. And this part of the bank's business and this business around the globe started to grow. And I happened to be the first guy that they ever hired to do this. And so as the business grew, my responsibilities grew. And I went from being a paralegal to the time I left the bank, I was managing a group of negotiators who were lawyers and MBAs. I was managing a group of about 25 people at the bank, and had some people who worked for me in Chicago. And so I became part of management. So it was just all of this, and all the while, I'm almost all the while, I'm getting up and writing poetry in the morning and spending evenings at the Institute of Buddhist Studies, weekends at seminars, football games, all with the kids and all that family stuff. But it was it was the job that turned into a career. It was the job I never planned for that turned into a career that I never would have imagined. That I never would have imagined.
Yeah.
That put the kids through school and allowed us to buy a home and.
Wow.
And then when it all got really stale, my number came up after some kind of a merger, and I took early retirement and went to work at the bookstore.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
There have been two very important financial and business and practical advisors to the San Francisco Zen Center who had relationships with the Bank of America. One was Michael Phillips, who wrote the 7 Laws of Money, started the Briar Patch Network of Small Businesses. He was vice president of Bank of America, not for long. He had created the concept of the interbank card for Wells Fargo when he was vice president there, and became a big shot. So Bank of America hired him. He didn't like it. He didn't last long. He quit. But the other one was there a long time, like 30 years, is John Wilson. He was the chief economist for the Bank of America.
Wow.
He was a big shot. Although you wouldn't know it if he was. He was at Zen Center Some and his wife, and at Tassajara.
Wow.
Yeah. So now that we know a third person with a long history with the Bank of America. Hey, what's this Institute for Buddhist Studies where you go?
Oh, that's the Buddhist Churches of America Seminary in Berkeley.
Oh. People would give talks there in the 60s. Now, when Graham Pecci first came to the Zen Center, he went over to Berkeley and heard, I think he heard, oh God, you might, no, this is before your time. Irving Price, I think, speak at the BCA in Berkeley. and it was probably there at that place. Did they have talks like that?
Yes, they did there. At the time, the Institute was simply a building, that used to be a residence. It was, used to be a home.
Yeah.
And it sat right in the backyard of the Berkeley Buddhist Temple, the Shin Temple there, in Berkeley. And those years that you're talking about, it was a real hotbed of Buddhist activity.
Yeah, that was 1961 when he came, Grampechi.
Okay. Well, and Ananda spent a lot of time over there as well.
Yeah.
So no, that was really, that was an exciting place to be in those years.
I think Alan Watts talked there too.
Yes, he did. And now the Institute has a brand new building in Berkeley, close by, but not that old location, which I really loved. I loved the older place.
Oh yeah, sure, of course.
Folding tables and folding chairs and a kitchen and it was just a wonderful place to be. Not formal classrooms and things like that. It was had a very grassroots feel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I know Ananda liked that. He liked Zen Center in the early days. He got resentful of Suzuki's allowing it to get large and impersonal, but I think that was inevitable. But I know he liked more intimate things.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention one thing to you. We'd mentioned Zazen and Jodo Shinshu. I remember in near Kobe I can't remember the name of the little town, near Kobe in Japan. I had a friend that attended a Jodo Shin temple, but we went to a meeting. It was Zazen. We went to Zazen there. So, and that was in Japan. And I always remember that was my only Shin experience in Japan as a practitioner was going with, Ihara-san, who's a sculptor, still going strong, to, Zazen, with some other Shin Buddhists.
Yeah, and you'll find that here as well. There's a lot of interest, in recent years in Zazen, and then there's also, although I don't know a lot about it, there's Obaku, the Obaku tradition.
Yeah.
But in the Shin temples, yes, again, in a lot of the taboo, if you will, about, the practicing meditation, a lot of it has largely dropped away. Yeah.
Well, to me, if you're chanting Namu Amitabha Butsu, concentrated, you're being still, you're doing that. That's like Zazen. I mean, to me, it's just another type of Zazen. Yes. I don't have a strict definition of Zazen. I mean, Suzuki would occasionally, very rarely, give people mantras to deal with. right?
Really?
Yeah, and he had one student who had very deep enlightenment experience doing a mantra, and yeah, he went on to become the abbot of the Minnesota Zen Center, and yeah, quite interesting. Well, listen. Is there? This has been really interesting to me. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. I like to hear about people's lives because it gives. I've done a lot of podcasts with a lot of people, and it's to me, it's what sort of people passed through. What did How did they get involved? What happened later? Where they go to school, just a sort of sociological picture as well as, their way-seeking mind picture, which is, how they get into practice and that sort of thing. So I enjoyed hearing at least a snapshot of your full story. It was really interesting. And learning stuff from stuff about Jodo Shin to pipe fitting.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Evan. That'll be one of the things I'll share with my wife, that I just actually taught somebody something about pipe fitting.
Yeah. There were other things. I can't remember what they are right now that I went, well, I never thought of that, or, oh, that's new to me. Yeah.
No, well, good. And I've certainly enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was good. And I look forward to receiving your next batch of poems. I might have saved all the ones you sent. I think so. I might have messed up a time or two, but it might be thousands you've written by now. And
it very well could be. I really don't. I do keep them, the typewritten versions. I have a blog site that my daughter-in-law fixed up for me a number of years ago.
Oh, I got to know it. You want to tell me how to get to it?
I can send you an email, and it's on there'll be a what do they call it? There'll be a line for it, but it's Meditations from the Slow Lane.
Yeah, Meditations from the Slow Lane. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. Yeah. It's cool.
And it's and I have that at the bottom of my emails.
Well, then I've got it.
Yeah.
Because I've got zillions of your emails right here. I'm going to look at it. And all right. Oh, here we go. All right. Actually, so far I've just gotten emails I sent you. Let me see. Oh no, every one of those is ones I sent you. Oh, I know how to change it.
Okay.
To me. I just hit to me. Poems. There we go. Poems. Jerry Bolick, BJERRY.blogspot.com. All right. But I'll put it in at the first, and we'll have it here at the end, and I'll put it in the metadata, which means it will be written material that accompanies it. Meditations from the Slow Lane. Cool. Yeah. So you ought to do a book of it. You can self-publish. It'd be easy.
Yeah, I've thought of that from time to time, David. I guess I'm just too lazy or something.
Well, I know a guy who put it together for you, really cheap and quite well if you want. And you could do a book, you could do an ebook. I don't think about sales or that sort of thing. I just think about, it'd be cool. You have a book. You can, maybe somebody will buy it, but probably not. You can at least give it to friends.
Right.
You know what they say about poetry is there's more people write poetry than read it.
I haven't heard that before. Well, I can tell you that I write more poetry than I read, though. So
that's true with me for everything I do. Yeah. Yeah, it's embarrassing, but that's true with me. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Jerry. Well, thanks a lot, and keep up the good work. That's terrific.
Yeah, it's been great fun, David. Thank you very much for a nice evening. There's no one I would love to hear talk better than myself. So it's been
that's very truthful. That's true for most of us. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I've been accused of that. But admitting it is really a sign of greatness.
Okay, I'll remember you said that.
Right. Okay. Take care.
All right, David. Listen, I'm really glad that we finally got to do this, and thank you very much for thinking of me in this way. It's been great fun.
Yeah. Hey, if you find out anything about Ogui, I'd love to get a hold of him.
Yeah, I think I might have promised this last time we talked about this or shot emails back and forth.
Yeah.
I will see. I don't have a lot of ongoing contacts with BCA anymore, but I should be able to find out where he is. I have not heard. I have not heard news of his passing.
Yeah.
And I usually so that's in our favor.
Yeah.
I'll see what I can find out, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year,
you
indeed.
And your wife, yes, and your family. And when you find yourself in the Bay Area, do let me know so that we can get together for a cup of coffee or something like that.
Yeah, well, if it ever happens, no plans for it, but it could.
Okay. And, well, I know where you are, and so if my kids actually took my son and his wife spent 6 or 8 weeks in Bali one summer.
Wow.
And they brought their daughters there with them. So my wife and I, hell, you're going to take my grandchildren away for a couple of months. I'm coming. And we visited for a couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
And
when was that?
When was it?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Let me see. My granddaughter's now 16, and it was probably about 10 years ago.
Yeah, we came here 9 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a part of the world that we really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying it's in the cards, but it's definitely a place that when we visited, it's one of the few places we said, it would be nice to come back here someday.
We're waiting for you.
Yeah, and so, if that ever is in the wind, I'll be sure to let you know.
Oh, yeah. That's a requisite. Yeah. They won't let you in the country unless you let me know.
Okay, yeah. David.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So thank you very much, Jerry Bolick. It's been good talking with you. Oh, the one thing I want to say is I looked up about Highway 1. I think Highway 1 is closed now, south of Big Sur, and to get to, say, San Simeon Hurst Castle, you'd have to go from the south. But, I was looking at sort of the history of it when it's open and closed, and it said the road had been closed 55 times because of slides, and they had a very serious one, 10 years ago, where like an enormous amount of the road just fell into the ocean. So I don't know this instant. I think it's probably still closed there. But anyway, we weren't sure when we were talking. So this has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggy Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.